You need to be bold, you need to be extraordinary, and you also need to be human. And that voice was Dr. Vicki Johnson.
Thank you for that really kind intro. And I have to say, being on the Cornell campus 25 years after my graduation, it really does feel like I've come home. So it's really special. So this is a full circle moment for me. Today I want to talk about this question, why you? You know, there was a moment in my life where I realized the question, why you, was going to be the most pressing question of my career. And this is because every single time I was going to my next career opportunity, whether I'm applying to grad school, jobs, business accelerators, asking for promotions, there was a group of people, a selection committee, asking the question, why should we select you out of tens to possibly thousands of people? And I had this internal frustration with this question, and I realized it was because no one had ever taught me how to effectively answer this question. Not in grade school, not in college, not even in the workforce. Now, the first time I came upon this question, why you, and in a real high-stakes situation, was applying to college. So you probably all remember applying to college. The excitement, the pressure, the anxiety. You know, and this you're juggling with your high school academics and your extracurriculars and your work. So for me, this was a really high-stakes question, and I had to nail it. But let me take you back a little bit to my context. So this is a picture from my kindergarten graduation. If you can't see the screen, I am in a little white dress, you know, holding up a little tiny diploma with a huge smile on my face. And these are my Italian grandparents, Nanny and Papa, who were equally proud of my kindergarten graduation. And I think this picture sums up the type of student that I am, or was, and still are. I always loved school. I loved to learn. I wanted to be in every extracurricular. I wanted to do all the extra credit. I'm reading. I'm going to every activity. And so I had this internal drive to excel, and I still have this drive. I don't know where it comes from. But I had this drive, and so I was interested in figuring out how is this going to relate to the rest of my life. Now, I had a lot of influential people early in my life, and I always wanted to work in some sort of public service. And I also wanted to be a leader. So I thought I wanted to be, you know, President of the United States. I was that kind of kid. But, you know, I was listening really closely to all the adults in my life. You know, what do I need to do to be successful and to be a leader? And this is what I surmised. So first, get the best grades that you possibly can. Okay, check. Next, get into every extracurricular activity that you possibly can, and ideally be the leader of that activity. Okay, check. Next, it's important to serve your community, volunteer, be a contributor. Check. And then finally, get into the best college that you possibly can. So it shouldn't have been a surprise to my parents when I came to them and said, you know, I'm college bound, and I'm going to apply to some top schools, and in particular, my dream school, Cornell University. And this was a school that my dad attended in the late 1960s to early 70s. Actually, my dad is here in the audience, class of 71. But my plan was to take a different path from my dad, who majored in engineering, but he was deeply influenced by the civil rights movement that was happening here, especially on campus, during the years that he was at Cornell. And he later then went to seminary, and he went to serve in inner city Lutheran churches, and also was very involved in Boy Scouts and working with disadvantaged youth. So this really influenced me deeply. But for me, I was thinking, you know, I do want to work in public service, maybe government, and kind of, you know, work up and have more financial security. And I was thinking, you know, the best way to do this is to get into a really top school. And I thought to myself, you know, Cornell is a really good fit for someone like me, a go-getter who's also really interested in public service and equity. So I told this to my parents, and then, though, the tone in the room shifted a little bit. And they said, well, Vicki, you are working very hard. You've got a lot of great things on your resume, but it's going to be a big challenge getting into a school like Cornell. You're going to be an underdog candidate. And here's why. This is a picture from my high school yearbook. I graduated from Wilmington High School in Wilmington, Delaware. We were a city public school, and I actually was surrounded by lots of smart and very intelligent and creative students, but it wasn't really seen that way by the state or even the district. Our school was the subject of a lot of negative news, and the school itself struggled to keep up academically and in sports. And at some point, I don't know quite when it was, but they decided to institute school choice in my school district as a way to, I guess, solve these problems. But unfortunately, it only made the situation worse, and my school started to really lose students quickly. So when I was a junior in high school, they decided that the freshman class was going to be the last and final class of Wilmington High. And this was the oldest school in the state of Delaware. So in the midst of that, I'm applying for my college applications and dealing with a school that was losing investment, losing students, and struggling in a lot of different ways. Nonetheless, I met with my high school guidance counselor. I was going to tell her about, this is my goal to apply to these top schools. Cornell's my top choice. My dad's a legacy, so I would be a legacy to going into Cornell. And I felt relatively confident, I had my grades. I was a Girl Scout Gold Award recipient. I was drum major of the high school marching band, captain of the field hockey team, and I was even senior class president. Didn't have a lot of resources to do a lot of SAT prep, but I studied, took it once, and got a 1250 SAT score, which I thought was pretty good. So I felt pretty confident going into this meeting with the guidance counselor, but she's looking at me, she's looking over my resume, she's looking over my SAT score, and I noticed a little frown starting to form on her face. And then she says, well, Vicki, look, you've worked really hard, you have a lot of things on your resume, but this school has very few AP classes, and on top of it, your 1250 SAT score is not even in the ballpark of the type of students that go to Cornell. So you better make sure to have some safety schools on your list. Well, maybe what some people call naive optimism, I just call intuition, because I was completely already set on applying to Cornell. I'd already done a ton of research on the school, and I was working on it daily. I was looking at the mission of the school. I'm researching, what type of students they select. I'm looking at alumni in public service, like people like Janet Reno, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I was going to apply no matter what, and I was not going to be discouraged. And I realized that I had two unique superpowers as a young person. Perhaps my guidance counselor and even other people didn't know that I had them. So as you already know, the first superpower was that I understood the power of storytelling. Yay! Trying to tell a story. Here we go. It's just the word storytelling. Now, I told you my father was a Lutheran minister, and I watched this man get up on a stage every single Sunday and tell powerful and inspirational stories about humanity. And I would witness how this would move people from compassion to laughter and even tears. And I became an apprentice to this. I sort of understood that there's something in storytelling that can move people emotionally. And so I thought to myself, if I can figure out what the Cornell Selection Committee is looking for in students and tell a compelling and aligned story about my future potential, maybe my application will stand out in this huge sea of average applicants. Now, my other superpower was attention to detail. So it wasn't so much that I had attention to detail at that time, but I understood the power of attention to detail. Now, this I got from my mom. My mom was trained as a nurse growing up, and when she was, when we were younger, she stayed at home with us and raised us. And my mom was actually a very talented interior designer. She always had these magazines coming to the house called Country Living And so she loved this style of this Victorian country elegance. And my mom would go and carefully select items from thrift stores and antique shops, and she would really very carefully create a very organized, very detailed and beautifully decorated home. So around the home we had wall art, we had family heirlooms, beautiful feminine curtains, stenciling, and there was a lot of layered textures in, the patterned china, throw pillows, and even patchwork quilts that she made by hand. Now, when I was younger, I didn't really notice this. This didn't occur to me. But when I became a teenager, I noticed that my home is quite different than that of my friends. My home, a lot of my friends' homes had, a lot of loved items, loved furniture, but with no real theme. Some friends also had a more polished look in their home, but it really reflected like a favorite department store and really lacked originality. So when people came to our home, they really noticed all of this curated detail, and they complimented her on it. And she was so good at this, she actually went back to college at the age of 43 to earn her Bachelor of Arts in Art History. And she graduated magna cum laude. So she was very, very talented at this. So although I have not taken on her design style, I did understand that that curated detail gets people's attention in a really positive way. So when I was applying for Cornell, I had these two kind of superpowers, the storytelling and attention to detail that I got from my parents. And of course, like I said, I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm going to apply because my intuition told me that I was meant to be here. So I had these two things. I had the attention to detail and the storytelling, and I was thinking, like, what is going to be my story for Cornell? What's going to make me stand out? What's going to be memorable? What's going to align with their mission? And so with some actually brainstorming with my dad, I decided that I would tell the story of what it was like to be captain of the state's worst high school field hockey team. Yeah, we had the longest losing streak in the state of Delaware. We were the butt of everyone's jokes, and I was the captain. So this was a very interesting, unique lived experience for someone who needs to express their leadership potential. Which you might have thought that that would have been a bad thing, that we were a losing team. But I told this story about the power of the teamwork. So I expressed my experience with ambition, disappointment, teamwork, and most importantly, friendship. And then I linked that experience to my desire to be a leader in public service and that future potential that I was going to have. I talked about how I would leverage all of the assets that Cornell would give me toward creating a career in public service that would have a social impact. And wouldn't you know, against the odds, that got me into Cornell. Now, I can't know exactly how I got into Cornell, but now that I've studied the art of a winning application, I feel quite certain that my story really stood out. Well, number one, it was very memorable, I'm certain, because it was quite different than the stories of other candidates. Some people, I'm sure, were writing a lot about their accomplishments, going to the state championship. There could also be people who talked quite a bit about personal struggle. And mine was this sort of oddball story, but it was very unique to me. You would remember the captain of the worst team in the state of Delaware. So that stood out. But also, this story about my experience on this team, it had a number of underlying messages in just a few lines. So in just a few lines, I was able to demonstrate my intellect, my leadership, and my commitment to other people. And I surmised that that was some of the key things that Cornell was looking for in applicants. The other good thing is, thank you, Cornell. They gave me a very significant financial aid package, basically an almost full ride, which made going to Cornell possible. So this was a dream come true. When I opened up that letter with the financial aid, I will never forget that day. Now, it's interesting, that little experience, right, with the guidance counselor saying, you can't do this. You know, I thought, hey, I got into Cornell. This is it. All doors are open from here on out, right? But then I discovered that actually, no. That experience of discouragement, of saying, recalibrate your goals, it happened to me over and over and over and over again. literally still happens to me today. And I realized that, there's kind of a cultural phenomenon to tell people to recalibrate their goals to something more attainable. And so this is something I had to sort of fight against, right, as I'm going throughout my career. The next time when I really remembered this was when I was a senior here at Cornell. And of course, I'm thinking about, I got to get my first job, right? I'm a government major, had no idea, how do I get a government job or get my foot in the door somewhere? And I go to the career office and I found this glossy brochure for the New York City Urban Fellows Program. This is a very old, very prestigious professional fellowship. They take 25 recent graduates from all over the country, and they place them in full-time paid work placements in different agencies throughout New York City government. And it was very prestigious because you were called a fellow, you had this leadership development curriculum, and you would meet all of the heads of these big agencies, including the mayor. And this program's been around since 1969. Now, the career office person, and I don't remember who they were, it wasn't you guys, they said, well, this is super competitive, they get hundreds of applications. So, I did what I always do. I took my resume and the brochure to my senior advisor, who was a distinguished professor, and I said, what are my chances of getting into a program like this? And he said, well, Vicki, you have only a 3.2 GPA, you have no internships, and especially no government internships on your resume, and you have to keep in mind, you're not just going to be up against top students from Cornell, you're going to be up against top students from all over the country. So as kindly as he could, he said, Vicki, this might be a waste of your time. But, naive optimism, I decided, okay, but this is my dream opportunity. This is my dream job. This is exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to apply because really, I have to shoot my shot. This is it. I apply now and I can't apply next year, so I need to do this now. So I did exactly what I did with the Cornell application. I did a ton of research on the program. I tried to figure out what's the mission of the program. I looked at who they selected. I was looking up news articles about the program and what its purpose is, so I could figure out a mission-aligned story. And I worked on that very hard, figuring out, how do I express my future potential so they can see that I'm not just another average applicant. And even when I got the finalist interview for the award, I read the New York Times every single day leading up until the interview because I wanted to be the most prepared applicant in the competition. This is how badly I wanted it. Now, I knew that I might not get it, but honestly, all of this preparation, it was really worthwhile, even though I knew there was a good chance I won't get the opportunity. So I went to that interview, and I nailed it. I really was so prepared. It was pretty obvious among the other candidates who were there that I knew virtually everything about New York City by the time I came into that interview. So I do think that was the thing that got me into this program. And it was really a great opportunity for me because we were the 9/11 class. We started the program just a week before the World Trade Center attacks of 9/11. I thought I was going to go work at Board of Ed. I wanted to do education policy. But then 9/11 happened, and there was an opportunity to work at the Emergency Management Office. So I put that as my top choice, and I got picked for that too. And then I worked for 15 years at the intersection of emergency management and public health. And so I was doing that for quite a bit in my early career. And it was interesting because I didn't know anything about this field from my time from Cornell, but I sort of came into it because of this opportunity. So these opportunities are interesting. They do really open up doors and new pathways that you can't expect. So because the story approach now worked in two very high-stakes situations, Cornell and the Urban Fellows Program, I thought, okay, I'm doing something different. And I'm going to keep trying the same approach every time I go into the next competition. And this really did pay off. I got into a German Chancellor Fellowship. I did a Herbert Scoville Junior Peace Fellowship in DC. And I did a Fulbright Fellowship at mid-career in New Zealand. I also did 2 graduate degrees with merit-based funding. And I've also used this approach for all sorts of things. I've gotten into business accelerators. I've used it to pitch promotions. I've used it to build new projects where I needed to get resources, and especially to land every job. I tried this approach. So I knew it was working. Now, the only thing is I didn't know, is this just for me? Is this going to work for other people? Or is it possible that maybe this could work for people from different backgrounds and experiences. So I started to reflect, number one, what am I doing differently? What is it that that this is working so well? Then I started testing it. I started teaching people in individual mentorship, and then they started to have really extraordinary responses as well. They were going from rejection to selection. Then we founded ProFellow, and ProFellow is this big platform. Our first thing that we wanted to solve was to just, can people know about all of these hundreds of opportunities that I was finding through deep internet research? So I wanted to have a congregated place for these fellowships, graduate school funding, research funding, writers' residencies, business accelerators. There's like masses of opportunities. We have nearly 3,000 different programs listed in ProFellow that you can just go into our free database and find them. But then, people are very stymied by the competitiveness of them. And so I wanted to teach this approach at a large scale. So I started teaching it in workshops and mentorship programs and courses. And those folks were having really extraordinary outcomes as well. And these were people from all different backgrounds, different schools, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnicities, citizenships, you name it. It didn't matter. This story approach worked. So I'm going to teach you the story approach today. I call it the winning application story. And this is an extremely simple framework for answering that question, why you? And just like a story in a novel or a movie, it has three parts, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So let me go through the parts one by one. Now, the beginning is where you are today. And it's true that you do talk a bit about your accomplishments and the things that you've done, but even more important than that is your motivations. Why did you choose that college major? Why did you do that internship? Why did you go into that career track? Why did you spend all that time volunteering for that organization? The motivations are very, very important to selectors because they reflect your intrinsic motivation to solve a problem experienced by other people. And when your mission to solve problems aligns with their mission to solve problems, you can become a very standout candidate because that mission alignment is actually more important than all the little factors on your resume. So make sure when you're talking about your background, first and foremost, make sure you tell them why you do what you do, why you care about the things you care about. That's very important. So that's the first part. Now, when I'm doing a pitch, actually the next part is the end of the story. That actually comes next. And that is that very detailed future vision of impact that helps further their mission. So you want to give them a really detailed vision of what the future is going to look like if you get selected. But that vision is about the social impact that you're making on other people that's in alignment with their organizational mission. So you want to do quite a bit of research around what the group is trying to achieve, whether it's a university, a company, an organization. You want to figure out what are they trying to achieve, and then let me think, how would someone like me, with my unique set of skills and talents and perspectives, how can I help further that mission? What can I contribute? And like I said, what I learned from my mom is this needs to be detailed so that they can actually visualize it in their minds. Now, the last part of the story, which is actually the middle, is the story hook, and you do this last for emphasis. Now, you probably have heard of the hero's journey, that framework. The hero's journey is the topic, it's the framework of many of the biggest movies, right? There's a hero, they go on a journey, they have challenges, they meet a guide, and then they have the happy ending, right? They achieve their goal. Now, people hear this and they immediately think, okay, well, I must be the hero of the story, right? Because they're asking all the questions about me, and I'm going to come in and save the day, right? With all my skills and talents. Actually, that's the wrong approach. The hero of the story is actually the selectors. And to make them the hero of the story, you should talk about 2 to 3 unique factors that you're going to leverage, capitalize on to achieve that very detailed vision that you just laid out. So in the case of a job, it might be 2 to 3 unique factors of the employer, the company, or the organization that makes them different than their competitors or makes them better. What are they the best at? In the case of a graduate program, for example, you should be looking at 2 to 3 unique factors of the degree program and the university that make them different than similar degree programs. You're going to talk about how you're going to leverage those specific things. And even for other types of organizations, you want to think about, and other opportunities, think about what do they offer that I can capitalize on and combine with my skills to create that future outcome. So that is the story hook. They love that hook. Of course they want to be the hero. That is a very positive, inspirational, and aspirational way to make your pitch. Now, if you look at the 3 parts, only one of them is about the past. 2 of them are about the future. So it's like a 1 to 2 sort of mix of past to future. Now, what we're often taught is just build your resume, cram as much stuff on there as you can, have the best numbers, be the best at everything. But that is not, from a emotional standpoint, the thing that is going to get them to pick you. What you want to do is really capture them with that vision. So let me give you an example from a job situation that I was in. So when I was 30 years old, I was working in Washington, D.C. Like I said, I've been working in emergency management and in this intersection at public policy. And someone tapped me and said, Vicki, you should apply for this opening. It's a policy director position at the National Commission on Children and Disasters. Now, national commissions are actually very rare. This is an expert body that's set up by Congress to create policy recommendations for the administration and for Congress. They don't actually happen that often. So what they do is they fund this commission, they pick experts from different fields, and so those folks have full-time jobs, but they'll fly into DC, we'll talk through the report and the recommendations, and the whole goal is to create a very detailed policy report for the administration. And this was super interesting to me because the policy director was going to be the person that guides the report, while the head person, the executive director, was more of the operational head, but the policy director would guide that problem solving. So I thought, oh, this is really cool. This is exactly what I would love to do. And I was thinking about all the interesting people that I would meet. So number one, I was very mission aligned with it because this is actually right in alignment with what I loved doing. I was really interested in disaster and emergency management policy. But also, I was very interested in working at this commission because this was back in a time when our national leaders really did care about protecting the most vulnerable. So this was going to be a way for me to contribute to what was happening then. And this came out of the response to Hurricane Katrina and all the problems, dealing with the communities that got dispersed and damaged. So they needed to come up with this report to talk about how we would improve disaster preparedness, response, and recovery to meet the needs of children. Now, I was 30 years old at the time when this, was passed to me, and I was young and I looked even younger. So I thought, okay, but she was directly connected with the executive director, this mutual contact. So through that referral, which was very important, she got my resume to the executive director, which landed me an interview. But then I started to experience self-doubt because I heard through the grapevine that there was other candidates with 10 to 20 years more experience. There was someone with a doctorate. There was someone who had worked at a really well-known DC nonprofit. So I thought, oh, okay, first, maybe I just got this interview because it was a favor, right, to this mutual contact. So maybe I'm not even qualified for the interview, but I have it. But on top of it, how am I going to convince them to pick me over these extremely qualified people, right? Again, I'm the underdog in this competition. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do the story approach. And so I did what I always do. I did this deep research. In the days leading up to the interview, I did deep research on the commission, what they're trying to achieve, the people involved, the problems that they would solve, and I had to think through what would be the best way to get to the end goal, which is that big report. And I created a 5-page strategic plan with clear subheadings and bullets of how I would help lead the team in achieving that goal. I knew from my policy experience in DC that there's tons of stakeholder organizations all throughout DC, and they're all working on discrete areas that would be part of this report. So there's groups working in pediatric hospital response. There's groups doing education. There's groups doing public health. So there's all these different disparate groups. This commission could bring them all together. And then we should start there. We should start with the groups that already have policy recommendations and work up from there. So I talked about the groups. I listed a whole number of groups that we should engage as stakeholders. I mentioned specific events and conferences that we should make sure the commissioners attended. I talked about my policy writing experience with a few little examples. And I wrapped this up in a nice, easy-to-follow 5-page plan, and I printed it out and brought it to the interview. The cool thing is at the interview, it's the only thing we talked about. He was so astounded, he was like, tell me more. And so we talked the entire interview about this plan that I had put together. And on top of it, they kept bringing me in over and over until finally I got the job offer. I asked the executive director a couple months later, I said, why did you pick me over the other candidates? And he said simply, Vicki, you made a convincing case. That was it. It wasn't, I didn't win it out of credentials. I didn't win it because I had the most experience. I did it because I gave them a really specific vision of what would happen if they selected me. So I do think that was the thing that got me that dream job, and it was truly a dream job. It was one of the coolest jobs I've ever had. So this is why the story approach is so important to really work on. And the caveat is, the vision has to be good. The vision has to be well-researched. It has to be thoughtful. It doesn't need to be perfect because, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, but the research and the thoughtfulness is really what demonstrates your skills and your talents when you're pitching it, right? So if you do your research, it's going to be good. So the more research you do, the more prepared you will be. And so you don't always know exactly what vision they're looking for, but you could get pretty close. And really, the vision should be rooted in your unique experience, skills, and talents. Think about, what do I have to bring that's different? And every single one of you is a unique package of perspectives and skills and talents. There's no one else on the planet just like you. So this works for all types of opportunities. So that's the winning application story. Now, in my book, the Pitch Your Potential book that you all got a copy of, I go into a lot more depth about how to create a great winning application story using what I call the Match Me formula. This is the 7 elements of a winning application. And the elements are things like how to be memorable, how to be aligned, how to be timely, how to be highly specific, how to be mutually beneficial, and then how to be elegant, which is that careful balance in your tone of self-confidence and humility. So if you want to go in depth, make sure you read the book. Now, I just want to close this out with an explanation of why this works so well. Because keep in mind, what you're creating is from your imagination. This vision is in the future. That means anybody can do it. The biggest part of this is your creativity. How creative can you get? So get creative. Now, this is why it works so well. So number 1, it helps connect the dots for the selectors. So if you think about it, if you just go into an interview and you only talk about the things you've done in the past and your skills, they still have to map how does this person's skills and talents map to a future outcome. They have to do the thinking. So don't make them think so hard. Tell them exactly what they're going to get if they select you. Number 2, when you talk about capitalizing on their unique benefits that you researched and discovered, it makes them the hero of the story, which makes them feel good. Rather than going into an interview and talking about all the problems that you're going to fix, you're actually talking about the decisions that they've already made, the investments that they've made, and how those are these incredible things that, combined with your talents, is going to be the next best decision that they make. So it has a very positive spin to it. And finally, when you're working on your vision, you will be building your self-confidence. Even if you go into a competition feeling not very confident, like I did with the commission interview, as you're working on this vision, working on the detail, getting creative, it gets you excited. You will be excited to go into that interview sharing the vision. And you know what is the ultimate edge over other really qualified candidates? Enthusiasm. I know this myself because when I hire people for my organization, I will pick hunger over skills any day of the week. So when your vision will show that you've done all this research, you're super enthusiastic, you have authentic desire for the program, and that you want to be there, and that you're mission aligned. And all of this is showing, not telling. Rather than telling them what your skills are, I do this, I have that, you're showing them with the vision. So, anytime you go into your next competitive sphere, ask yourself, am I telling a story of the past, or am I telling a story of the future? Because that future vision that you paint, that is how you nail the pressing question, why you? Thank you. All right, and I think we can do questions, right?
Yeah, do Q&A or...
Yes, let's do it.
Feel free to ask. Everyone's shy.
Go for it, Olive. Yes.
I feel like a lot of the advice that I hear around careers and applications is just apply to as many things as possible. But what I'm hearing you say is like, if you find the thing that you want, you put your time into it, and make that one thing happen. Which that will connect to what I would love to do. But is there a balance in there of like not getting your hopes too set on the thing that you are enthusiastic about and the vision?
Yes.
That you connect with?
Now, we actually often approach these things as a numbers game. So we think, if you think about spray and pray, you might have heard of, you just apply to lots of things. And there's this idea that, well, if I apply to a lot of things, at least one thing will land, right? The problem is, if you are superficially applying to a lot of things, and I hate to say it, AI is making that like exponentially more possible, you're not going to stand out. Because think about it, there's hundreds to thousands of candidates for these various opportunities. So if you haven't put a lot of real time and thought into that application, it's probably not going to stand out, among the many. So I do think, in my approach, I wasn't applying to lots and lots of things at once. I was very strategically applying to things that I had a very authentic desire. The other thing is that we worry that if we pick a particular discipline, like what if I don't like this? I made a point in my early career to try to get as many different experiences as possible. I was changing careers jobs about every 1 to 2 years in the first 10 years of my career, so that I could build different skill sets and also build networks, because I've always understood that people are kind of what power your career. So the people that you meet, and then showing them that you work hard, and also hopefully they're sad when you leave. I mentioned that yesterday, like if you work really hard and make a really good impression from the get-go, when you leave, people are sad. They don't want to see you go. But those people are the people who will go on to give you rec letters and references, and it will help. It just accrues over time. So I do think it's better to really hone in on the things that you really want. It might feel like, well, but I've only applied to a handful of things. If you've applied to them with a really high effort, I think you have a higher likelihood of getting into one of them than if you apply to tons of things with a kind of a superficial effort. So, you could try both. Try experiment. I always think it's good to experiment, but, work with the career office, fellowships office to figure out what are the opportunities that are the most aligned with our goals, and then, work on creating super strong applications for those. Try to have fun, too. I know that rejection is a scary thing. I got a weird kick out of doing this investigative research. Like, I don't know why. I just thought it was kind of fun to be the most prepared applicant. Maybe that was my go-getter stuff kind of going overboard. But, it did work for me. Yes, I have been rejected from stuff, guys. Believe me. I didn't have the right vision for a lot of the opportunities. Or I wasn't quite, I didn't have the right skills yet to show a vision that would make impact. But you'll get better and better at it over time. So also think of every opportunity as a practice test. Even if I don't get this, I'm building my skills in the pitch, which is super important.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Could you please give another example of how to tell that vision, like with something tangible, like an office job, a secretary job, just something so I could sort of nail down more of those.
You mean like an entry-level kind of regular
entry-level,
position?
assistant position. information.
Yes.
Like
Now-
you read the job posting, but
Yes.
it's hard to know.
You have to go beyond the job posting.
Right.
You know, job postings are usually just like a big long list of tasks. Often they're even written by the people who aren't even really going to be your boss. You know, it's some other thing. And I find that a lot of job postings are also full crammed with like, you have to have this and this and this and this. But interestingly, if you were to go into, let's say it was an entry-level like admin position, I would try to figure out, okay, still, what is this organization trying to achieve? I know that I'm just coming in as an admin, maybe just doing paperwork, travel booking, conference setup. But then you have to think to yourself, how could I do this job really well? How could I show them that I'm going to be like the most reliable, most effective person? So maybe you pitch, hey, I've been working in some new CRM tools like HubSpot, or I have a little bit of experience with AI. I know how to create newsletters really quickly because I've been fooling around with ChatGPT, and I understand, I'm Gen Z. I understand how to put that into an organization that maybe is a little bit behind on that. So you have to understand, maybe just ask some questions. What tools are you guys using right now? Try to talk to somebody on the staff so that you can pitch an idea that you are going to be the most effective admin person that they have ever seen in their lives. But here's the other thing. Commit to being that person when you get in the job, right? Don't just pitch it and then get in there and like not do what you said you were going to do, because it's important that you follow through with the vision. But I feel like you'll get a lot more career satisfaction if you go into every role and try to do it as best as you possibly can, even if there's things you don't like doing, which honestly, there's no job on this planet where you're going to not do stuff you don't like doing, right, MJ? There's always like stuff. Career office, there's always things, admin stuff that you have to do. I'm still doing admin stuff as a, director of my organization. So that's what I would say. Like, you do have to do a little research because the job description is not very telling. So the thing is, are you willing to go the extra mile to do that research for an entry-level role? That's what I would ask. But I think the person who is the one that's going to get picked. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to that too. Like, when you're talking about, maybe a really competitive internship or a really competitive like professional thing where the mission is like broader and it's not specific to the program you're applying to, do you have any advice on how to make sure that what you're writing, even if it is for something kind of administrative, ties into the mission of the organization in a way that they're going to like?
Oh yes, absolutely. What you want to do is show them how, especially for short-term things like fellowships, internships, and even graduate school, they have an end date. You want to talk about the impact that's going to happen after the opportunity, beyond the opportunity. If I have this internship in this think tank in Washington, D.C., I'm going to have the opportunity to build a network in D.C. Like, my plan is to meet people in this particular discipline, get involved in the many events that are here. D.C.'s full of events, free events all the time. I would talk about how I'm going to leverage the internship toward a future impact that's beyond the internship. So don't just focus on the direct opportunity, also think broader. How am I going to fully leverage this internship then to become this future leader in whatever it is that we're going to do? I mean, selectors, that's what they want to see. They don't want interns that are just going to come in, put it on the resume, and then we never hear from them again. They want to know that you're really going to take it to the next level and fully utilize everything the internship offers. Even the things that are not explicit, but are sort of part of the benefits of being there in the geography, in the kind of circles of people that you're going to be working with. Even think about your peers. You're in an internship, you might be with other Ivy League graduates and other people from other schools. There's a peer network there too. So get super creative of like how you're going to leverage those things that capitalize the benefits for the future social impact. Go for it.
Okay, I have a specific opportunity in mind, but I guess I'm a little bit nervous to think about what if I don't have a vision yet? How do I develop a vision?
You do the research. Now here's the thing, you have a whole unique set of skills and talents, so here's what I want you to do. First, try to do research on their mission and their goals, and especially try to figure out what is this group trying to achieve in the next 12 months. Now a lot of people, when they depend only on the static website of the organization, it's kind of outdated. They don't have news on the direct website of what's really going on in the day-to-day. Sometimes the best places to look are in newsletters, Sometimes they have kind of press releases like, hey, we got a grant to do this, or we're incorporating AI to do that, or we are being part of this major UN conference for this other thing. You know, try to figure out what they're trying to achieve. What is their mission, and what are their goals in the next 12 months, so that it can be really timely and urgent, you know, what you're going to do. So it's only through the research that you can come up with the vision. You can't do the vision without the research, or the vision will be probably not, it'll be off base. So even with like fellowships, I always had to do these project proposals. And, you know, I noticed that a lot of candidates would say, well, it would be interesting to think about this. For me, I always went to the host institutions and asked them, where is there a gap that needs to be filled? Where is there a research gap or a project gap or any kind of work gap? What are your priorities as an organization? Because then when you pitch a project that is filling their gap and their interests and their priorities, way more likely to get picked, you know, and funded. Because then the organization is like, please pick this person because we really need them to do this, right? We need that. Yeah, so think, you know, try to fill gaps and try to figure out what they're trying to achieve in the next 12 months. Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of the inverse of the question that I don't know if this name is just asked, but I've definitely come across internships where what I would be doing on a day-to-day basis is very much aligned with my interests, but the mission of the organization may not. How do you handle that situation?
Well, when you say you're not mission aligned, like you don't care about what they're trying to achieve as an organization, but you want the skills?
Sometimes like that. I guess,
Yeah.
like, so I'm an engineer. There are a lot of engineering jobs that are with, you know, various corporations that I may not agree with how they do things as corporations. But maybe that particular project or that particular role is a bit.
I mean, you know what's interesting is that they might still, so if you have an idea for how you want to use your engineering skills to solve a problem that is not necessarily being solved by the organization, right? Let's say you want to get these engineering skills so that you can build a different type of company or be part of a different type of organization. I mean, as long as the social impact that you're trying to achieve is something that wouldn't be against their mission, you can talk about, you know, this is a great opportunity to gain skills in this particular code base or this particular engineering approach that then I'm going to, in my future career, like I really want to apply this to climate change, you know, mitigation. You know, and I think as long as climate change is something that you think the leaders of that organization are going to care about, I think they would be perfectly happy with that. If they're a group that doesn't care about climate change, then maybe they're going to consider you a mismatch. So just think, you know, sometimes these things are very tactical, but you have to, I think everyone is inspired by social impact, positive social impact. We need problem solvers in this world, right? So if you say, I can get these skills through this opportunity, and my goal, hopefully in the future, is to then leverage that into solving this other problem, they could be fully on board with that. They could be really interested in that. If you find yourself, though, trying to make a story that feels misaligned with your values, you know, reflect on that a little bit. If you think, oh, I don't really want to work for, I don't know, let's say a big name social media company that you don't like the way that it's impacting the world, then really reflect, is that where I want to do my internship? You know, do I really, I mean, I could get really high level skills there, but will I feel icky going to work every day, right? Because I don't really agree with what they're doing. These are things to think about. And actually, honestly, not applying to those opportunities sends a message to those organizations that maybe they're not meeting a societal need in the way that they should. So, you know, this is where we have to start making hard decisions, right? Don't hurt yourself too much on this, but I mean, you know, you could in your mind say, I'm going to use these skills and then I'm going to turn it into something that's going to make a positive social impact. So yeah, you can feel good about doing that. Yeah. Go for it.
I've actually had the opposite reaction in some ways, where a lot of the people who are my bosses are saying, apply for things that you're not qualified for, that are like harder to get, like they've been pushing me to do these things. I guess one of the questions I have for you is, when you know that you might not like meet all of the things that are on that list that they have, how might you say, like, I have a lot of these things and say all those skills, but how might you put a spin on the things that you don't have, or how you might get opportunities to learn more of those things?
Yeah, I mean, you could say if there's certain qualifications that you're like, oh, I don't have 5 years of experience in this. I mean, one thing, like I said, the biggest thing is enthusiasm and hunger. So even if you don't meet all the qualifications, if you come in and say, I love to learn, I'm going to be here every day working to help you further your mission, this is what I do bring, and I think this is a great opportunity for me to learn a bit more, and this is how, post-opportunity, this is how I'm going to leverage it to contribute to this problem. I mean, it's organizations, like I said, me personally, I would pick hunger over the perfect skill set every day of the week, because you want people who are intrinsically motivated to show up at work and be a productive and satisfied member of the team. So I think you would be surprised how far enthusiasm can go. And even just relationships and rapport that you build with the leaders that are hiring. So I'm glad your professors and mentors are saying, apply for these things that seem out of reach, because that's kind of the opposite message I was always getting early on. But I also think they want you to build your skills doing your pitch. Nobody wants you to be discouraged because you're getting rejections, but I don't want you to think of it that way. I want you to think of let me practice this a little bit. Maybe you'll get some feedback, even if you don't get it, and that will just help you get better and better and better. So don't be afraid. Just fill in the gap with enthusiasm. That's what I would say. Yeah.
So
Go for
we
it.
have time for one more.
One more. Okay. And I'm going to sign books after, so stay around.
I know, yes.
Yes.
Stick around.
Thank you for your presentation. Your storytelling really shined through. So I'm curious, for a job posting that requires a resume, how do you tell a story? Maybe since I'm in engineering, if you could answer that.
Ooh, you can't even write an email. You just put in the
Yeah.
I would add an objective statement at the top that says how you were deeply aligned with their organizational mission and how you have kind of be able to summarize the skills a bit. I'm a computer science student with a specific specialty in this, and I'm looking for an opportunity to contribute to a problem like this and gain skills to further that into my career. Like, put that objective statement, because there's two types of little paragraphs you can put at the top of your resume. You can put a summary, or you can put an objective. A summary is more appropriate for people who are kind of mid-career, late career, and they have to summarize lots and lots of years of work experience, and they can't have it all. So they'll summarize it. Or if you have a really kind of all over the place resume and you need to kind of summarize what this resume means. But an objective is this is what I want to do. And so you can put that little paragraph in there, a couple lines. My objective is, I'm looking for opportunities to help solve this problem and gain these skills to impact my career. And, I'm not a huge, AI, guys, don't use AI to write cover letters and stuff. You always should start with your own first draft. But you can use AI for brainstorming. If you're thinking oh God, I have 3 lines. I only have 3 lines. I'm trying to express this. Put in your writing and see if the AI can help you summarize it better, or pick the right words for it. That's a way that you can use AI ethically to just help you create the best presentation of yourself. But always kind of start with your own stuff. Don't just say, hey, ChatGPT, make my resume, and then, who knows what you'll get. But does that make sense? So try that objective statement. That's what I would do. And go out and meet people. Guys, you should be going to every opportunity, every grad school fair, career fair. You should go meet people in real life, because I'll tell you, I talk about this in the book. There is research that shows when you go and meet people in person, like selectors, they'll have a name and a face. They'll kind of recognize you. So when your digital application comes through, they're like, oh, yeah, I had an awesome conversation with Vicki. She had all these interesting questions. You can kind of be considered favorably if they've already met you. So really make the point. Career offices, I'm sure they have lots of opportunities to meet employers. There's grad school fairs, career fairs. Don't miss those, and don't do the online ones if you have an opportunity to go to the in-person ones, because there's something really powerful about getting your name and face in front of selectors. There's literally research behind this, so do that too. that could also give you just a little bit of an edge that you need when you only can give them a resume. Got it. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.